Dave and I were talking yesterday about some of the thought process of rolling into different shows and plans for competing for the year. And we wanted to jump off today's conversation thinking about the long term of what competing actually looks like. Dave, can you tell us, I mean, we were talking a little bit yesterday about, do you want to do the national show? What's kind of the long-term plan and your thought process for wanting to eventually turn pro?
Yeah, so if I guess the little bit of backstory here is that my original plan with this competition season was to do this local qualifier in Austin and then roll into USA's. And I've got to qualify again anyway because I didn't place very well at junior nats last year. I think I got into shape, but it was a competitive lineup and just wasn't big enough, wasn't good enough yet. So now that we're almost here, I'm strongly considering not doing USA's after all. And if I say the reason out loud, it almost sounds kind of shitty, but I have more of an explanation behind it. And the reason is that I just don't think that I could place super well or win. And my mindset for bodybuilding so far has been to basically see every prep and every show is kind of a stepping stone to the ultimate goal, which is to turn pro. And then, I don't know what beyond then, hopefully be competitive as a pro, but got to get there first. And so, having these really good preps, good in terms of getting into shape and getting very lean and depleted, has set the stage for like a 50+ pound gain in stage weight over 2 years, which has been awesome. But, again, I've talked before about how I love the process of this whole thing more than I care about the end result. And so if the end result is not going to be that ultimate goal, and competing costs money, it costs a lot of time and frankly, like emotional and mental investment. I'm just like, do I really want to suffer and put the rest of life on hold really for another 3 weeks? Or do I want to say, all right, mission accomplished as far as getting this prep done and getting super lean, and then dive back into the rebound in the off season and keep making progress? And I waffle on this a bit because there is also the part of you at the end of prep that is just completely fatigued. And I mean, I don't know anyone who doesn't feel this way at least a little bit. Like, your hormones are not where they should be. Your body is in a place it doesn't want to be. You just feel like absolute shit. And so the prospect of not having to do that for another 3 weeks is pretty enticing anyway. But, if I take a step back and look at it, just try to look at it purely logically. I don't see a huge reason to go and compete for the sake of competing, because competing is not what I love. Competing is like the end goal. So yeah, those are my thoughts at the moment.
Just as your wife and as your training partner too, one of the things that I think has been really telling over the last couple of weeks is progressively more and more, probably every week, I hear you say more frequently and more vehemently how much you just miss feeling like a tank when you're training. And that's kind of what you do, right? Like you throw plates on and you handle weights that make people in the gym, like everyone just kind of stops and turns and watches you. And for you love training so much that, again, just as your training partner, watching you struggle to like do the thing that is so just you at baseline is always really interesting. Yeah,
I can sympathize with that 100% because I feel the same way. Training was always the thing for me. It was the competition was a way to show that work, but it was really, and even the competing was really more a way to improve the training, because I knew what happened when I could start an off season from extremely low body fat. I'll kind of cover it from a couple angles, I think. One, I guess as a weird analogy is I would say, if you were a really good athlete at a large high school, a high school where typically only juniors and seniors would make varsity, and then maybe 1 or 2 sophomores each year in each sport would get moved up to varsity, but they weren't going to play. If you're at a school, 3,000 students, or down in Texas, even larger, and so you'd always hear the parents say like, well, I want them to play, but the thing is, study after study shows that those players that move up, even though they don't get the game time experience, are always dramatically improved as they age, and when they do play, from all the practice time and time spent at the higher level, even though they're not playing, because it's like the adage, you play to the level you're playing against, and people do that all the time. A great team will play terribly against a terrible team because it's like you play down to their level. And I think a lot of it's hard to say how much of that carries over in bodybuilding, but bodybuilding is a stage sport. It's a, you know, I don't know if you, what you call it, sport, a pageant, whatever, but that stage component does play a large role. And you don't get that at a local show where you walk through and you win the overall without even having to pose, you know, you don't. And so, and I don't know how important that component is, but it does play a role. And you can picture any Mr. Olympia lineup. When does the, you know, who's confident, and you know who thinks they're winning the show. They hit the pose last, they make everyone wait for them. There's kind of, and then multiple guys will think they're in that position and they'll make each other do that. And you kind of command the stage. And if you, without that time at that level, and if you're new to that really high level, you don't really, it's very unlikely you're going to have that the first time. I mean, no one does. Maybe Phil Heath, you know, but by the time Phil Heath did the USAs, he had a year and a half of hype of everyone telling him he was the next Mr. Olympia, which is a different scenario, you know. And I think you can have a pro physique that deserves to win a pro card and not earn that pro card 100% if you look like a novice or you look like it's your first time at that level. And I don't know where that comes, if that only comes from being there, or if you get that from the confidence of knowing your physique is at that level. So I'll say that. And then in Dave's case in particular, I think because if we weren't going to do the USAs from the start, we would have done the diet slightly different. He's going to be lean enough to win, you know, the overall at his local show, and he'll be very lean, but it'll be, you know, 95% of what he would be 3 weeks later. You know, there's going to be those last couple pounds, and I don't know how much that plays into the off-season boost also. But I agree also with him that when we've already discussed, I've said basically he's a pro bodybuilder, except for lats and triceps. You know, I mean, you know, for the most part, I mean, he's got obviously pro legs, you know. His back thickness is professional, his chest is professional, his shape, you know, his waist, he's still got a tight waist, great abs. But he still has some of the remnants of a lifetime of being a powerlifter and basically a season and a half of being a bodybuilder. And so it's a tough call, and I can understand 100% where he's coming from. And that's a thing that there's no correct answer on, because on one hand, you have, yes, he is lean enough to get a great rebound. He'll be qualified. He's done his job for this year. If we feel like it, you know, we're not a shoo-in for a pro card. I think it'd be a long shot for a pro card, you know. And so you get to start your off season earlier. And we know what he's done the last 2 off seasons. We're talking probably another 20, 25 pounds of muscle, which at that point makes him a pro bodybuilder. Yeah. You know, so we know the next year he's coming in as 270 pounds, 265 pounds on stage, ready to win a pro card. But
that's cool to think about.
But there's also that aspect of how many times has someone been overlooked by being that 265-pound freak that no one knows, you know. And you get, it's not impossible, because the way the calls go, you know, you walk out in groups of 15 and there's always the one spot that has terrible lighting, and there's the guys on the end, and if they're not looking for you, you walk out in your first group for quarter turns for just straight comparisons, you know, and you're on the far end with bad lighting and half the judges don't even know you exist. This happens every couple of years. I mean, maybe it might have been like 5 years ago now, and I can't remember his name now. He was third callouts at USA's, I think, and then came back and won the overall North Americans, because everyone after USA was like, what the, you know, because the judges just never looked at him at comparisons. He went and did his quarter turns. He was on the end. No one knew he existed. And he's in the back, you know, row. No one even saw him when they're doing their numbers or call outs. And then he goes out for third call out, and it's like, oh crap, everyone's like, you know, everyone knew the judges screwed that one up. How did they miss him? And the poor, God, I wish I remember his name, but the poor guy, you know, did the whole prep and got screwed because no one was looking for him. And all it took was, if they were looking for him, they would have looked for him, but they weren't. And all it took was him being in that far end position with shit lighting, and he didn't get noticed. That would be my other word. So that's kind of my both side pros and cons double advocate. There's no right answer, and I think both answers are correct. So
I think with regards to what you mentioned with like coming out on stage, like kind of ready to own the stage too. I think some of that is personality too. And yeah. I mean, you have to have some sort of swagger when you come out there. Like you have to come out there and act as if you've won, I think, and kind of carry that energy. And if you haven't put the time in to things like posing and visualizing what that needs to look like. And, you know, I've done some sessions with Kenny Wallach for posing, and even at the amateur looking to turn pro level, now working with him as a pro, looking at a pro stage, his detail and the level of detail for cues and just small tweaks here and there. And I don't know how much of a difference it plays, but I will tell you that like just the experience I have working with him even a little bit, it's truly a different, I mean, you really have to be up there and just kind of expect like, they need to look at me. I deserve to be up here, and you have to come out there and kind of drink your own juice.
Yeah, and you can have that as a first time at that level. You can. I think it's more difficult if you have that as a, okay, I did say David does the USA's this year, and say he gets 7th and gets screwed as 7th. He's, you know, he gets second call out and he looks like he should be first place, second call out. For some reason, the judge don't like him. He gets 7th, and then there's like kind of a buzz on the internet, you know, like, you know, that Dave got screwed. That builds hype. Then the whole next prep, he's posting pics online. He's posting pics on www.teamtroponin.com, and you know, people are following his prep and like waiting for him to get on stage. And then he knows everyone thinks he got screwed last year. He knows he added 20 more pounds. He knows he's a front runner. Everyone knows he's a front runner. The judges follow all that stuff. They know he's a front runner. There's a lot to be said for that, as opposed to bringing the exact same physique with none of that hype. So, but there's also no guarantee that you get that hype. You know?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Like, and this is probably a way in which bodybuilding is changed, obviously, with the advent of social media. But you know, even now, like, what's the difference in hype generated by actually going, competing, and doing the thing, and having the judges' eyes on you in person versus, you know, posting gratuitously on social media? Can people generate that same kind of hype?
Well, I'll give you a clear-cut example. Ben Pollack was the most conditioned, I think, possibly in the whole show, and definitely in the super heavies at his first pro qualifier. Was first call-outs, but was on the end of the lineup. You know, I think got 5th or 6th. Felt like he got screwed. Went back, did North Americans, which was maybe not the right call. Brought a fuller look, showed the judges something different. They did not like that at all. But there was hype that he got screwed, and he posted those pictures of him just inside out shredded online, you know, and all the replies of you got screwed. What happened the next year at the pro qualifier? And it's not like he brought a better package, but it's not like it was a 25-pound muscle gain package, you know. And where was it? Clear cut, first place, won his class, no questions asked. And I don't know that same physique would have done that if that was his first pro qualifier, because a few things. He learned to pose better, like his rear double bi. He learned to, you know, present it better, and you don't really see that until you see all those stage photos. And you'll get some photos at the state level, but they don't let you take pics in the audience. There's always some local photographer that gets the rights to do the photos, and half of them aren't very good. And you know, who knows if you're going to get that same feedback. But that, to me, that's a clear-cut example of. And I remember even saying that to Ben at the time, you know, and I've said this to other people, you almost don't want to turn pro right out of the gate, because then no one knows who you are, and now you got to compete at the pro level. If you, you almost want to get arguably screwed, you know. And when I say arguably screwed, everyone in the top 5, 6, 7, 8 looks pretty good, you know. And typically the placings are what they are. And guy who took 6th didn't get screwed in that he should have won the show. A lot of people think he got screwed because they thought he could have been in the top 5 or maybe 3rd, but that's all it takes to get that hype. And then you present a better version of that physique. It doesn't even have to be dramatically improved, but people see it was clearly improved, and they know that the thinking was that you got screwed last year, and the judges aren't impervious to that. I mean, humans are human.
How much do people actually look at competitors who are in the 2nd and 3rd callouts and go, oh, you know, this guy in 2nd callouts got screwed? Because like, as a consumer, I look at first callouts. I don't even look at 2nd callouts.
Well, you don't, but the people who are friends, fans, and family of that person will post it online, and it gets, it gets around. And you know, the same 2nd call out, you're probably not, you know. But if often the first call out is not 5 people anymore, you know, it's usually 6, 7, sometimes 8, you know. So we still kind of think first call out as people get, you know, get a medal at the end of the day, get to pose at the night show top 5, but really first call out is hardly ever just 5 people anymore.
Right.
And so so I mean, first call out is basically, these are the people who came in shape and have the potential to turn pro in the near future. is really, you know, it's basically people who nail their conditioning, you know, and also have, you know, good size. It's kind of a reward. And then that, you know, then the top 5 are the top 5. But that's, you get that first call out, and especially if you get that first call out and aren't in the top 5, you're like, your day's ruined. But it's oftentimes a blessing in disguise, because you end up getting more hype online than the person who took 4th and deserved 4th. You know, I don't know. I don't even remember who took 5th at Ben's at the USA's in 2000. Was that 19, 20? I can't remember what year it was anymore.
This is 20,
21.
20. Yeah, yeah, but I don't even remember who was 5th. I don't. No, Brandon Barrow was 4th. I mean, Nate Spear was 3rd again. Yeah, I mean, so you know, and that happens. There's like even names I don't remember, like the guy who got screwed 3rd call outs. I remember that happened. You know, I don't remember. I couldn't tell you who was 6th place in that show either. It's a weird phenomenon, but getting screwed is often the best thing. Getting screwed as an amateur at a pro qualifier is often the best thing for your career. If Nick Walker would have turned pro, his first pro show, he still would have been Nick Walker, but he wouldn't have been Nick Walker. Him not winning, everyone expecting him to win, thinking he got screwed. Then he comes back, makes a few refinements, and it was the fine tuning things, that because he used to look small when he posed. He didn't pose big. Something was wrong where he didn't look like Nick Walker, and he came back not carrying 20 more pounds of muscle, but somehow presenting it as though and then boom, then he's Nick Walker, and then that freight train's rolling, you know, and I don't think that he would have been the same Nick Walker if he turned pro at his first pro qualifier. I think he would have turned pro, not had quite as much hype. People, and even worse, people might have said like, I didn't really think he deserved to win. I think he only won because of his name. And then, you know, then you do a pro show and you don't place well, and boom, you're that's it, you know.
Yeah. So then, Dave, let me turn this around and kind of bring it back to you. You know, hearing those thoughts now, and just looking and thinking about not only everything Justin's mentioned, but even just the day-to-day of, again, like the end of prep sucks. Like if you haven't done this before or done one of Justin's preps, you always come in condition. It's just what Justin does. It's, you know, but looking at Dave's face,
not enjoyable.
and even just Dave is someone who is incredibly energetic. There's really not a lot of lulls in his energy most of the time. And he's at a point now where like even just getting up is to task.
I kind of presented my argument as more that I thought Dave should do the USA's. That's not necessarily true. If your heart's not in it, you shouldn't compete. You'll get burned out, and you only have 1 or 2 of those before you're done with the sport. You know, I mean, if you don't love doing this, you know, it's like torture. You know, it's like, you know, if they starved you and worked you like this in a prison camp, it'd be against the Geneva Convention. You know, if they fed you nothing but fish, you know, like no fats, maybe you do hours of work a day, hours of heavy lifting a day, and almost no food, you know, with minimal sleep, it'd be a war crime, you know. And so you have to want to do that. If you don't, it's gonna feel like a war crime.
Yeah. Well, to throw another.
No, I just like having this conversation going. I'd love to know kind of where your head is at now, because I know where it was yesterday and earlier today.
I'll have to think about it. I've got to process the answer a little bit, but I mean, to throw another wrench in the works, there's the whole the job situation. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm still a software developer in my day job, and you know, you got to be mentally sharp. And Justin jokes about trying like just not to get fired during the last few weeks of prep, and it's kind of true when like you can't follow shit that, you know, 2 months prior was very easy. And
you're not getting a promotion in 2 weeks out of the show.
And I'm also in a process of maybe switching jobs, and I really wouldn't want to be brain dead at the beginning of a new job. So that's something that might impact the decision within the honest of the next week or 2. So
well, I would say do the qualifier, see what happens. Plan on not doing the USA's. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's the right choice, but see what happens. You know, if you do qualifier, I don't know who the head judge is there. It might, if it is a national judge, or if one of the judges is a national judge, and they talk to you after the show and they say you got to do the USA's, I have you winning the USA's, then you revisit it. If you don't, if that doesn't happen, then then we go into off season, get big and strong.
One more kind of factor here. So let's say I thought, okay, I'm not going to do USA's this year, but then I'll make that the show next year, and partly because I think USA's is it's always the first pro qualifier of the year, right, in the US. So
first male pro qualifier. I think some of the,
you got Junior Nats Junior Nats is a pro qualifier for every other division. I think Junior USA's is also, but so USA's is always July. Lately, it's the beginning of July, and then the one after that would be North Americans first. Okay, and then there's North Americans, and then there's nationals in December. So I guess it's
Universe also.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, Universe is not a qualifier for Men's Open, other than like a tested show. It's weird.
Yeah.
So do you ever see somebody kind of get screwed, so to speak, at the USA's, or just not quite make it, and then come back and smash it at North Americans or nationals? And I think it happened last year, but I know it also kind of falls.
It happens all the time. The one guy that I can't think of his name for whatever reason that came back at North American, I believe. It happens. Yeah, that's very, very common. And then that's you got that hype train rolling, and there's no chance for it to die down. So that's always beneficial.
I think that happened in the heavies last year with Eric Wood, came second at USA's to Jordan Hutchinson. I think he won his card at North Americans afterwards. But I know that's also in that range where it's kind of a sucky range to have to do a whole prep, and then you don't have really long enough for an off season, but I mean, I guess if you're at that point where you really are knocking the door of a pro card, then it's like you've really found a reason to suffer through it. But I guess is that something you'd even consider if you had a client?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that difficult. What we do is if you do the USA's, and then the USA's sucks because it's a 2-day show, but after the second show, if you're still alive, then you get to pick out that night, you pick out the next day, and then we usually give you anywhere from 3 to 5 days of really high calories with clean food, and then we get back into a diet again. So it's almost like the week before USA's isn't really totally a diet, because you get a couple days of higher food intake, and then you get like a full week of being completely off the diet as far as caloric content. And then you probably bring the cardio down, and you get another week with quite a bit of cardio drop, and then at that point you got like 3 or 4 weeks of work again. So it's really not.
Is it that close? I was thinking USA's is July. North Americans is
September.
Yeah, it's like 6 weeks, I think.
Oh, is it that close? I was thinking it wasn't till November.
Yeah, I think it's 6 usually, but
North Americans.
Yeah, we can check. I could be wrong, but I feel like it's we have.
Okay, yeah.
That. Yeah.
This year the North Americans is August 31st, so that's like 7 weeks after USA's, I think.
Yeah, so it's always because I've had this several times, and it's like you get that first week after USA's where you're not really dieting, and then the week before the North Americans where you're just peaking, and then there's like a month of diet again. But that first week of the diet is almost no cardio, so it's really only like 3 weeks of hard dieting again.
Okay. Gotcha.
For more content like this, visit www.teamtroponin.com.